This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning and welcome to Monk Out on Mondays. Today I'm joined by Richard Lamburn, who's the Head of Facilities at Swim England. Good morning, Richard. How are you today?
Morning, David. Yes, good, thank you.
Excellent. So, Richard, we need to do the Chief Medical Officer bit and find out what you're doing. What are you doing to keep active at the moment?
Well, regularly, I've got two dogs,
Right.
so regular walks as usual, really. So it hasn't really changed for me, but maybe a little bit longer.
Okay.
There's a few more people out and about. I'm lucky enough to live in a part of the world where we've got plenty of countryside. I can walk from the front door in, and a few very, very nice, no longer walks as we're
right. Good. Yeah, and the countryside is beautiful. I'm in the same position. I live near Bradgate in Leicestershire. And the volume, you're right, there's a lot of people about at the moment, and I think that's really good. People are looking after themselves. They're trying to remain active, which is excellent. Okay, so the one thing we can't do, of course, is go for a swim. Okay, some open water has opened up. There's obviously a lot of regulation around that, and we need to be very careful about using open water if we've not used it before. But from a swimming pool point of view, we can't use them at the moment. So what's the good practice? What should operators be doing with their pools at the moment to make sure we're really ready when we get the okay to get going?
Yeah, so I'm also, as well as being the head of facilities for Swim England, I also sit on the executive board for PewTag as well. So work very closely as organisations, and providing that directive and information and guidance to pool operators. And at the very beginning, we preempted in some ways, and we had a guidance note, technical note ready to go that provided that information on how to hibernate your facility. So the last thing that we wanted was for pool operators to turn the switch. Issues then that could transpire would result in us losing a lot of facilities, or at least seeing a big increase in capital costs to get them back operational. So we advised that pools slowly reduced their heating, reduced their turnovers. So they were still turning the water over, still moving the water, but of course at a lower frequency, saving some costs, reducing temperatures, saving some costs, maintaining disinfectant levels within the water. So that of course prevents any bacterial growth within the time in which it's not in its usual operation, and limit algae growth. So we're in a position to almost re-emerge from this period and have our facilities open with as little trouble as possible, and with as little maintenance or capital investment required. And on a whole, I think that was really successful. We did a number of different webinars through the Institute of Swimming, which were really highly well received, and great numbers as well attended those, and the consensus was that most had followed that advice. We also did put out some advice on if you was to flip the switch, so to speak, and turn the power off, how to hibernate the facility with regards to what we call traditionally a winterization process. But in general, we're in a good position, I think, by and large, with regard to that process. Operators have done an excellent job to keep their pools in a condition that will enable them to return to operation with as little trouble as possible.
Okay, that's really interesting, and I've spoken to a few people about working out their base load and using this as an opportunity to understand what is the minimum operating levels from an energy point of view and that type of thing. And I suppose this is one of those moments, isn't it, where if you've got a pool leak, you're going to know about it now because you've got no other way of losing water apart from a leak. So I guess there's also operators, yes, they've hibernated, they've done sensible maintenance, but at the same time, they're starting to really understand what is the minimum level of requirement in which to operate that environment.
Yeah, and I think that as well, and coinciding that with using this as an opportunity to undertake those maintenance regimes, filter refurbishment, number of pools that have been retiled in this process, and using that approach to actually, rather than closing in 12 months' time when it was originally scheduled, let's take advantage of this time period now and do that. And I think that I'm hoping that actually there may be an opportunity for us to almost reset with regards to some of our traditional ways in which we run facilities, as you say. What are the minimum levels? How can we reduce temperatures and still provide a nice environment for people swimming, but actually save some capital costs on the way in which we operate those pools, which is fundamental for the future of us, is sustainability.
Yeah, and we all, those that have operated those environments know how expensive they are. So anything we can do that makes a difference. And as you say, just doing the maintenance now and saving yourself a 2-week close down period where you interrupt the experience for your customers, you interrupt income. Doing it now makes a really good sense. So I suppose that leads us to really where we are around reopening. And I know you're going to be launching you've launched your guidance, you launched it on the 15th, and there's some really interesting stuff in there. But is there any sort of tips or highlights you'd like to share from that guidance with us?
I think, of course, the guidance follows a very much a common sense approach that we've seen across all sectors about limiting the transmission. It's about risk control, giving you the information in order to implement and produce risk assessments to prevent that transmission of coronavirus. The key takeaways are the environment in which we are, which is unique to anything else, which is water. We're in water. And the evidence is clear that within the water, the transmission of the virus is nigh on impossible. We've compared and contrasted across a number of different envelope viruses across the world. This has been done, and the evidence is very clear that the levels in which we operate swimming pool facilities, transmission in the water itself is dramatically reduced. And as we release this podcast, hopefully we'll have even more evidence to support that. At the time of today, I am very, very confident that through the water, we provide a safe environment. Of course, there are issues of airborne transmission as there are everywhere else. So we're still going to have to work on implementing social distancing to a degree that provides a level of tolerable risk within the environment. There's always going to be risk, as there is when we're in the supermarket, as there is when we're outside in the park. But we've got to control that, and the benefit that we've got is that we've got disinfected, sanitized environment that's around us within the pool tank. The air and the air circulation as well is going to be a key factor. Increasing evidence is coming out that's currently it's anecdotal, it's not yet completely proven that at high temperatures and high humidities, we're in a better condition with regards to the transmission of the virus, with regards to limits, it potentially falls from the atmosphere quicker. We're reviewing that every day, as why we haven't released the guidance at date of recording, because fundamentally we've got to be guided by the scientific information, and if we're not going to be opening pools for a fair few more weeks to come, that we hold the guidance till we've got as much as possible scientific information, and that is going to develop and continue as well as we move on. The key pinch points for me and the areas around the building they're going to provide the highest level of risk are those pinch points, access to and from the pool tank, access to and from changing rooms. While you're in the cubicle, you've got an enclosed space, so you're in with people from your same household. Transmission is going to be limited, but touch points on surfaces, door handles, lockers. So the guidance covers those very much common sense approach with regards to how you control that, how you control numbers in those environments, how you implement cleaning regimes. So there's nothing that should be that should dramatically sort of make people go, this is completely different to what we're used to now, because a lot of our environments are following the same similar trends. It's just those unique natures and characteristics of the swimming pool that I feel provide us with a little bit more security.
Yeah, no, that's really good to hear, and I'm so pleased that we're taking as much time to look at getting the guidance right based on the scientific facts, because I think we're all used to that as a population now, aren't we? From a point of view of what the politicians are saying, the chief medical officer is saying, they're following the science, and I think that's a really important place to be, because my view on this is, yeah, operators want to get open, we want to get the buildings open, but it's about giving customers the confidence. So I understand how you're going to communicate this with operators, so they know what's expected. Is Swim England doing anything around communicating with the wider general public? Because the survey is telling us that people want to see the experts' view on what's safe and what's not.
So I think to come back on that guidance, it's imperative that we haven't just developed it, in-house on a solo approach. It's been developed, first of all, with all the operators to make sure it's functional. So we've got a functional approach that works, that's feasible as well. Let's not move away from the fact that, yes, we could have 4 people in the pool and put them in different corners, but that's not going to be feasible for us to run a business. So there's that element first, that it's been developed so it can be functional and applicable to running a pool. And then we've also worked very, very closely with a number of virologists and Public Health England, as well as Sport England and all the other nations. So it's been a very much a sector-wide piece of work and very vast consultation. But there is a piece that will be user guidance, and I think it's important that even providing that to the individual, to the swimmer, provides them with a level of comfort and a little bit more reassurance that there is robust measures, that for them we've given specific guidance on how they book a session, how they find out about the operator's individual control measures on their site, routes and access points to changing rooms, the confidence within the water as well. So trying to do a number of pieces on that, on highlighting the evidence that the of transmission is lower within the pool tank.
Absolutely.
And key. We did do a piece of work very recently on the importance of pools, highlighting the savings to the NHS and repositioning that. And I'm sure that there's more and more of that for us to do over the coming weeks. My area of expertise more so in producing the guidance and the technical information, and then it's down, and then we've got our marketing and comms team then to use that and take out the science to reassure the public.
Absolutely, and you alluded to the fact there the report on the state of the nation effectively on swimming was really interesting read prior to lockdown. And I'm quite keen for people to start thinking about the opportunities that can come out of this. So have you got any ideas around what we could do better as a result of what we now know?
I think one of the real opportunities that we've taken at this is a collaborative approach across the sector, working very, very closely, getting operators to work very closely together, getting local authorities and asset owners involved in the private sector and the public sector in the consultation process, and seeing that pools are integral to all of our business models and the benefits of them there, and just picking up with that relationship that we already have, and a great one with Sport England, and the way in which we can develop and make the case for swimming. And it's fundamental really that we've got a pandemic on our hands here that as well has been largely affected by, like you mentioned at the very start, people's health, and improving people's health and physical activity is only going to help us as one of the strange to better protect us in the future. So I think it's important that we don't forget that. And of course, from my perspective, we take lessons from this in design as well. We look at UV treatments on air circulation as an example. Is that going to impact? We're better prepared for the future pandemic. One of the, to me, one of the key things is that we clearly didn't learn as many lessons as some other countries. When you look at SARS and MERS, and we take that and we still put physical activity front and centre. And which I think was quite a positive. I felt that we was in a positive state at the start of the year with regards to swimming specifically, and looking at reviewing our stock, understanding that we've got an ageing stock of pools, making the case for why we should be replacing them and why we should be providing that provision, and the advantages that it provides the general public.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been talking to a few people about prehab effectively for our bodies to protect us more from these environments, but you've just introduced prehab for our design and building, which is brilliant. So actually starting to think about what could our buildings do differently, how could we design them differently in order to make sure that actually we can rise to this challenge again. So, and I think that moment, Richard, is a really good point to stop, because we've had our time. I think we've done well to fit all of that in. I want to talk to you again, Richard, because the knowledge that's inside your head sounds fantastic, and I want to drag a little bit more of it out. But for the moment, can I say thank you very much for your time, Richard? Take care, and I look forward to seeing all of the guidance. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.